Eric Asher is underwritten by.
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save it, Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair,
custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping,
and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports, live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios on an absolutely beautiful day here in Old New Orleans. Of course, we'll talk about all the home teams today. Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. Of course, we'll talk a little bit about the Final Four, which again just left our city. And all that and so much more here on the show. And to break it down for us, one of the best we have here in the city, award-winning journalist, Les East of CrescentCitySports.com, Saturday Down South, and of course, accomplished author as well. Les, welcome to the show. Always good to have you back, my friend. Before we get started, why don't you tell the folks about everything you're involved in?
Thanks, Eric. Good to be here again. As always, I'm writing for CrescentCitySports.com. Been very busy with this Pelican stretch run and the Final Four and Saints free agency, so quite a bit going on there. Saturday Down South, covering LSU for them. They have a sister publication covering the ACC. Okay. So I was able to do a couple of stories from the Final Four with North Carolina and Duke being in the mix, and so that kept me quite busy over this past weekend. And of course, I have the book, Donkeys, Elephants, and Giraffes, which you've been kind enough to let me talk about periodically. And it's about sports and politics, and we're in a busy time of the year sports-wise, and we're about to get into a busy time politics-wise. So it's going to be timely once again, so hopefully folks will check it out at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and other platforms.
Definitely a good read, folks. So again, if you're looking for something for summer reading, head out to the beach, grab the book. Definitely a good read. All right, guys, let's jump into it. Saints make a trade this week. Everybody was, again, myself included, a little bit impatient with the Saints in terms of going out there and filling holes, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They've done a really good job of re-signing their own, bringing back guys that, again, were once in the system as well. Maybe a guy that went somewhere for a season or two and bringing those guys back. Some of those guys are again, camp fodder, where, again, they'll have an opportunity to come in and compete. Maybe they don't make the final 53. Maybe they're on the practice squad. We'll see how it plays out. But they have not really made any big splashes in free agency thus far. Of course, they bring Andy Dalton in as their backup, which, again, I thought was a really good move because, I thought he was the best of what was left out there in terms of backup quarterbacks. Why don't we start there, and then I want to get into the trade.
Okay, well, first of all, I think you hit on the biggest difference between last offseason and this offseason, and that is keeping so many of their guys. Yes. Last year they lost 11 or 12 guys who are contributors in free agency. That has not been the case this year, and that's certainly helpful. As far as Andy Dalton, yeah, I think that's a good move. He replaces Trevor Siemian, who was an afterthought at this time last year, wound up having to play a lot, and I think gave a pretty good account of himself. Wasn't great all the time, but he helped him win that Tampa Bay game, and he contributed otherwise, but I think Andy Dalton's an upgrade there. With Taysom Hill kind of being removed from the quarterback situation more than he was last year, you need an experienced backup, and they got the best one who was on the market. So I like the Dalton move. I think they're in pretty good shape at quarterback, and I think they don't have nearly as many question marks as last year because they haven't lost the volume of players that they lost last year, but they do still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And again, speaking of the quarterback position and Taysom Hill, I believe he will still do the quarterback power. Everybody thinks, again, he's done, and they'll get behind center again. That would be foolish on the part of the Saints to not utilize him in short yardage goal line in terms of quarterback power. But again, to me, it's a natural position, him moving to that F tight end. That's one of those tight ends that, for them, that moves all over the field. You know, people have to remember, again, he's not going to be sitting there going out of his stance and just blocking. He will be a guy that is going to be moving the defense depending on where he is in that particular play.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to the whole thing is that it's good to find a home for him, so to speak, relatively speaking. But he can do pretty much everything he's done in the past from that spot because of the way they move him around. So he can be a tight end, he can be split wide like a wide receiver, he can line up like an H-back in the backfield. So I think that's the logical place to put him and still maximize what he can do to bother the defense. And I think you're right about the quarterback situation. I think they're going to find a way to utilize him in certain situations. I would expect he would get fewer snaps at quarterback than he's gotten in the past. That was Sean Payton's baby, and he was eager to turn to that whenever things weren't going well, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It served them well in a lot of cases. I'm not sure that Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael are going to be as quick to go to him if they have a couple of stagnant possessions on offense, but I do think short yardage, goal line, if they do need a spark after struggling for much of a game, I think they'll still turn to him in the quarterback role. It's just not as frequently.
Well, that leads us to the trade this week, which caught a lot of people by surprise. And really, when you look at it, really a great move on the part of the Saints, depending on, again, what they do with the picks. They made a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Saints get the Eagles' first-round pick at 16, their first-round pick at 19, the 194th pick, which is a sixth-round pick. The Eagles received from the Saints their 18th pick this year, their first-rounder. One of their third-rounders, the 101st pick in the draft, 237, which is a seventh-round pick, and then a 2023 first-round pick and a 2024 second-round pick. Seems like they are positioning themselves to go out there, get the top offensive tackle that they can get on the board, and a top receiver. Some believe this is an opportunity for them to move up and get a quarterback. I would say that would be a foolish move on their part, considering, again, the quality of quarterback that's in this draft right now, to maybe give up a couple of picks to be able to, especially high picks, like #1 picks, to go get one of these players, one of these quarterbacks. But if their plan is to go up and again, fill the needs on offense, the loss of Teron Armstead with the offensive tackle position and the wide receiver position, which is really deep, and those first four are really kind of separated from really the rest of the draft, that looks like it is a great move on their part. Your thoughts on the trade, your thoughts on the direction they may go?
Yeah, first of all, I'm glad you read all that off, because there's a reason I became a writer. I'm terrible at math.
Me too.
There's I couldn't have remembered that, let alone try and quantify
I got it right here, guys.
Say who got the best of it.
Right.
So thank goodness you took care of that part. When it comes to the move, you know, this isn't a move where you're targeting somebody. Okay, we're still 3 weeks from the draft. They go from 18 to 16. They're not sitting there saying, you know, oh, 3 weeks from now, when we're at 16, we can get this guy, but he wasn't going to be there at 18. No, you can't figure that out at this point. Draft night, you might be able to figure that out if you wait long enough. So what they did, I think it's twofold, is they've positioned themselves with the 2 number ones. They have the assets necessary to jump into the top 10 if they want to, presumably to get an elite tackle or an elite wide receiver. A lot of depth at wide receiver. They can still get very good quality at 18, better quality at 16, especially with the Chargers sitting there at 17 and possibly looking at a receiver. So if they want to go into the top 10, I think it would probably be for one of those 2 spots. They have the assets to do that. But I think also in their thinking is if we don't find the trade that we want, and they're probably right now trying to find a partner that they can have in their pocket on draft night if they need it, then they say, well, we still have a few holes to fill with Armstead going, with the lack of depth at wide receiver, with the secondary. So we can use 2 impact players this year because we're still a playoff caliber team. So I think all that makes sense for them, even if they have to sit there at 16 and 19. That's still a good fallback plan if you don't get into top 10. So I think that's where they're at. They set themselves up with 2 good options, not knowing at this point which one they're going to be able to pull. Now, a wild card, I would say, is the possibility. This draft seems to have a lot of really good edge rushers. Particularly in the top 10.
There's no doubt.
So if they jump in the top 10, it could be to do that. Dennis Allen is a defensive coach. You know, he doesn't mean he's not going to go offense, but certainly he's going to be very mindful of what they have on defense. Cam Jordan is still a good player, but he's starting to get up there in years. Marcus Davenport is going to require a lot of money if you're going to keep him. Now, they do have the #1 pick from last year, Peyton Turner, that they're counting on him to be a part of this. But you need, a lot of people in your pass rush to be successful, and that's something, because of the quality there in the top 10 or 12 picks, I think that's something they could be looking at if they make that second trade to get into the top 10.
That's interesting because, again, everything you see from the mock drafts, the edge rushers are going to go high. Again, it's a big man draft. You're going to see offensive tackles are going to go high. It's going to push some of the wide receivers down. It's going to push some of the quarterbacks down. It'll be interesting to see if they go in that direction. See, to me, man, I'll tell you what, it goes back to Trey Hendrickson. And again, this is a double-digit sack guy that, again, you could have paid last year. You chose to be able to pay Marcus Williams. Marcus Williams is a 1-year rental for you, basically. The contract that Trey Hendrickson got at Cincinnati was not, again, a big-time contract. It was a contract that was really based on incentives. Saints could have matched that. Saints could have held that, even again with the cap problems they had. So, again, if you're telling me they're looking for an edge rusher a year later after they draft Peyton Turner, I'm saying, again, there's something wrong with Jeff Ireland in that draft board when you start looking in that direction. To me, offensive tackle, because you've lost Armstead, becomes a priority, especially if you're not going to flip Ramczyk to the left side. And then the other part is they need weapons. Again, even Drew Brees echoed what I've been saying on my radio show for a while now. Jameis Winston, to be an effective quarterback in the NFL, needs weapons. Drew Brees was able to take guys that were undrafted free agents, low-round picks that could catch the football and could run precise routes and make them take them from journeymen into players that were feared in that particular offense. I don't think Jameis Winston has that. So he needs weapons. So to me, again, they have to surround him with weapons, and again, you got to protect him first, right? That was an issue last year. But the other part of it is weapons. Some think it might be a quarterback, and next year's the quarterback draft. The year after that's the quarterback draft. You've given up 2 top picks in the next 2 drafts, and we'll get to Sean Payton in a few minutes on how you can augment that. But to go and get a quarterback this year and give up draft picks, I think would be wouldn't be the best use of their draft capital.
Yeah, well, there's a lot there. First of all, as far as the edge rusher, if they go for the edge rusher, they're thinking a year or 2 down the road.
They're thinking Cam Jordan's getting ready to retire.
And maybe they don't pay Davenport. So that's something where they're not saying we have to have that this year. But we have an opportunity to address it, and in a year or 2, it is going to be a priority. Tackle, wide receiver, that's an immediate need.
Absolutely.
Right there. If you don't get a tackle, unless you're very lucky, you don't get a tackle who's going to come in and start and be effective as a rookie unless you get into the top 10.
Right.
Maybe higher.
Or you get lucky with a Ramczyk at 32.
Right. You have to get lucky. Wide receiver, there's no question they have to bring in one or more wide receivers who are going to play prominent roles next season.
Agreed.
The draft is going to have to provide at least one of those, preferably in the first round.
And maybe two, right?
Oh, it could be.
Right.
I think they need to get two somewhere,
I agree.
and one of them has to be high up. So one of those picks has to bring them a wide receiver.
I agree.
And now that they have two picks in the first round, it gives them some latitude. And if they want to go up, they get one of the elite ones.
Sure.
But as far as a quarterback, that doesn't make any sense to me. First of all, you look at Ian Book is still on the team. A year ago, they were saying, we like this guy. We can develop this guy.
Now, was that Peyton saying that?
Yeah, now Peyton's gone.
Right.
I don't know if Allen and Carmichael feel the same way.
Right.
But even if they aren't sure about him, a lot of the mock drafts had them getting the quarterback of their choice at 18. You can't say they're going by 18 to 16. We're guaranteed to get whoever we want.
I agree.
So the only reason you make that move to set up to try and get a quarterback is if there's one guy there and you think this is Pat Mahomes.
Right.
This is a guy, I don't care what the mock drafts say.
Right.
This is the guy we have to have. We'll go as high as we need to go to make sure we get him.
Right.
And we're not going to sit there and hope he falls to 16.
I agree.
I don't know if that person is there. Certainly the consensus among people evaluating the draft is that that quarterback is not in this crop.
And there are some, look, and we know, you guys, the closer we get to the draft, the hotter the quarterback names get, right? Now we hear Malik Willis. Again, you've heard, what was it, Ritter from Cincinnati, okay? And so I read something this week. He's the perfect Saints quarterback, right? But you may be able to get those guys a little bit later on. Now, Willis looks like he's rising on draft boards. Remember, Carolina's getting a quarterback. So and they're in the top 10. So they're probably going to get the first shot at a quarterback unless somebody jumps them to be able to do that. The question is, again, with next year's crop and the following year's crop being, again, a much better and deeper crop, unless you are quarterback starved, are you willing to go do that? Saints have Jameis Winston on a 2-year deal. Yes, they can get out of it after this season easily, and he could be a bridge guy if necessary. But at this point, you need weapons before I think you need to invest in a young quarterback. We don't know what they're thinking. Maybe they love one of these guys. They fall in love with that is. But 4 picks within the top 100, 3 picks within the top 50. Their second round pick is 49. So there's some flexibility there, and there's a chance to be able to, again, for this to be one of those drafts like 2017. Remember, the 2017, they had 2 first-round picks. So this is an opportunity where you got 4 picks in the top 100 to get 4 really good players, if you stay pat, that can help your team immediately.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying I don't think this has anything to do with quarterback unless they've identified one of these guys as a generational talent. I don't think that's the case. So what they're looking at is, like I said before, the two-pronged thing. If we can find the right deal to get an elite receiver or tackle prospect, possibly defensive end. If we can do that, we have the assets to jump into the top 10. But worst case scenario, we don't make another trade and we sit there and we get 4 players in the top 100 because we need that. We need playmakers at wide receiver.
And you need cheap labor.
Yeah, and that's another thing with all the cap problems. If they can start having impact players who are young players being underpaid, relatively speaking, then that's another bonus that they get when they go into free agency next year and the year after. So I think it's a good move for them because it gives them the latitude to try and move up and get somebody special at a position of need, and if not, it allows them to plug a series of holes.
And of course, with the first-round pick comes the 5th-year option. It's really good when you have a quarterback under a 5-year deal, when you have a offensive lineman or a defensive lineman under a 5-year deal, because some of those guys, they take a year or so to develop before you get them on the field. So again, having those 2 first-round picks helps you there. A lot of folks feel like, okay, why do that now? Why would you risk, again, the 2023 first rounder, 2024 second rounder, when you may need a quarterback? Well, again, the school of thought out there from a lot of people in this market, fans and those in the media, are that Sean Payton is not going to be in the booth long, that he's itching to get back into coaching already, and that there's going to be compensation for him wherever he goes. Now, we can debate the compensation, but I don't care how close the Saints are to Sean Payton. I'm talking about the inner circle there. It's business.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, you have to get the maximum amount for Sean Payton if he's going to be on the sideline at Dallas with the Los Angeles Chargers or even the Atlanta Falcons, okay? Who cares at this point? You have to, again, get a treasure trove of picks for him. And I wouldn't budge unless that was the deal. Okay, and maybe that's what they're thinking when they give up 2023 first rounder, 2024 second rounder, is we're going to augment that with the picks we're going to give for Sean Payton. And oh, by the way, compensatory picks is something they've taken advantage of over the last three drafts. And of course, again, there's a possibility they'll get that with Armstead signing with Miami and Williamson signing with Baltimore. Two highly touted players that again were either Pro Bowl players or on the cusp of Pro Bowl players. Armstead, one of the best in his position.
Yeah, and first of all, if the Falcons want to hire Sean Payton down the road, you really make them pay through the nose.
Yes, there's no doubt about it.
But yeah, your point is well taken. They are, and I think our friend Jeff Duncan tweeted about this shortly after the trade was made, and it's a very
great
good
minds
point.
think alike.
Absolutely, and it's a very good point that everybody thinks Sean's coming back in the near future. And I don't think Sean's even denied that.
No, yeah. As a matter of fact, in a recent radio interview, he pretty much said, I'm going to want to coach again.
Yeah, and so he's coming back, and so you're going to have an opportunity to get picks and quite possibly a lot.
Yeah, maybe players too.
Yeah, so that gives you a little cushion there in giving up these other picks. Also, they feel like they were 9-8 last year with an inordinate number of injuries.
Right, and all the losses they had due to COVID.
Yeah.
When you start talking about, again, in free agency because of the cap.
Right, so they're sitting there saying, if we just don't have as bad a luck as we had last year, we're a playoff team. We might win the division. Right. If we supplement what we have, we might make a run deep into the playoffs.
Especially the way the NFC looks right now, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So they're not, in Tampa Bay, Tom Brady changed his mind and came back, but so what? They got problems too.
Again, they've been hit by free agency and retirement.
Yeah, so they're sitting there thinking, we're right there. So I'm not worrying about the one next year or the two in 2 years, because what we get this year can make us a really good team this year, and we're going to maintain what we've been doing all along for the foreseeable future. And then when you factor in the potential windfall you talked about, it's all the more reason to do it. So I think they're sitting there. If you're a Saints fan, don't sit there and look at these charts and say, oh, the Eagles got 3.5 more points than they did because so-and-so has an algorithm or whatever. Forget about that. The point is they believe that they can still make a run at this thing this year and into the future if they make good draft choices and good decisions, and there's every reason to believe that's true.
And that leads me to, why would you take this draft capital and move up for one player, a quarterback? It makes no sense.
No,
you've got a veteran quarterback who played well for you. Now look, we don't know who Jameis Winston is going to be this year. Sean Payton was a huge personality on that sideline. And you could see, again, that he went out of his way, meaning Winston, to not turn the ball over, didn't want to get the ire of Peyton, etc. We have no idea how that's going to work with Carmichael, even D.A. on the sidelines. Okay, but let's just, for argument's sake, say he's the same guy he was last year. You're not looking for a QB. You're looking for weapons. You're looking to fill holes here because you feel you're that close. You have a championship defense. That defense is, again, you'd like to bring Quan Alexander back. At least I would hope they would, considering, again, well, even though, again, Werner played well last year, Quan is a spark for this team. They've done it with every other player pretty much from this defense that they could bring back, they brought back. To me, again, it's offensive weapons, and it's not just in the draft. It's also, again, as we get into the, I guess now the third or fourth phase of free agency after the draft, where again guys realize, okay, I'm not getting the money that I wanted, and it's time for me to go and sign somewhere else. Look, there's a guy up at Southeastern right now, Cole Kelly. Again, big guy, went to Arkansas, played in the SEC, tore up again the Southland Conference, and is got the size, got all the measurables you want in a quarterback that you might be able to get in the 6th round or as an undrafted free agent. You know, so there are prospects out there if you're looking for prospects. To me, it's filling holes that are necessary for you to get to be able to compete this year for another championship.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the wide receiver core has to be addressed, and it will be addressed. Okay, we're hoping and we're assuming Mike Thomas is going to come back and he's going to be healthy and he's going to be Mike Thomas.
Sure.
No guarantee of that, but that's a reasonable expectation. Re-signing Traquan Smith was nice, but I think
it's a cheap asset.
Yeah, but I'm thinking he's maybe your 4th receiver.
He's a guy that can block for you downfield.
Yeah, and so he's okay.
You can't overuse Hardy because you know he's going to get injured.
Right.
Okay, Callaway is a guy that maybe is your 3rd, 4th receiver?
Yeah, I'm thinking if I'm looking at that depth chart, I'm saying I really want to add a 2 and a 3 receiver.
Right, you got to.
Okay, and so the draft, you can easily add a 2. And there may be one guy, I talked about identifying that one quarterback who you fall in love with. There might be one of these receivers or 2 of these receivers where they say, it's a nice crop, but that guy's special.
Right.
We're going to go get that guy because he's going to be the deep threat that complements Mike Thomas.
Right.
And then free agency, you might be able to get a 3rd receiver or whatever. But yeah, there's no doubt they have to give Jameis Winston more to work with. And a lot of the success he had last year was connecting with Deontay Hardy, I believe it is now.
Yes.
Because of his speed and his ability to get deep.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not sure they're going to be as cautious with Winston as they were last year because if they're able to put the weapons around him.
Right.
Last year they were saying, well, we can't be too aggressive because we don't have the receivers to get open and make the play. So I think you could see an evolution in Winston's game that's dramatic just because of the weapons that presumably will be around him.
Which I would think most people would look at after last year and say, and I've said this over and over again, one of the reasons why I felt like Winston got hurt was he's a pocket guy. He's not running around. He felt like he had to run around for 2 reasons. A, had so many injuries on the offensive line. B, his receivers were not getting open, and he was not moving the football. So again, you've got to get first downs. You've got to be able to move the ball. And that was one of the reasons why, again, he was taking off running like he was. In a all things equal type world, you want him in the pocket throwing the football downfield. And he just didn't have the assets to be able to do that. You can bring that in with this draft class. There are still guys out there, whether via trade or via free agency, that can come in and augment that as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I guess the bottom line on this is I think if I were to say what's most likely is if they trade into the 1st round, I think it's to get the tackle.
Right, me too.
Because they have to protect him.
Yes.
And the depth at wide receivers means they can still get a good wide receiver somewhere else in that round. If they don't move up, then I still think certainly one of those picks, 16 and 19, one of them's a wide receiver.
Right. And I think one of them's a tackle too.
Probably, depending on the quality there.
I agree.
But they're not in a position, and they always like to be in a position, as they should, where they don't have to draft for need. Right. They can say, if the 2nd wide receiver is better than the 1st tackle at 19, we'll take the 2nd receiver.
I agree.
So I think that's what they look at. They want to get another tackle, although they don't necessarily have to, but they really want to get a tackle. Wide receiver, they have to get 1 or 2 guys. But I think they have the assets to do all of that.
Me too.
Still.
And a running back. Look, I think people glaze over the Alvin Kamara off the field situation. He's going to be suspended. He is a big part of this offense. Plus, they overused him last year. It's one of the reasons why he wasn't able to make it for a full season. They need another running back. Okay, maybe they're not going to go the route of veteran now, okay? But you can get a quality running back in the 2nd and 3rd round in this draft. Somebody that can come in and play for you immediately. You know, again, hopefully, again, you can bring Mark Ingram back. He's got a little bit of tread left on the tires, but again, for when Kamara goes out, you need another player that can protect the quarterback, catch the ball at the backfield, and has the ability to be able to run.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things that Sean Payton showed, and I think a lot of teams in the NFL learn from this, not just people in New Orleans, is that the value you can get from running backs in the second round, third round, later.
Yes.
Even somebody like a Pierre Thomas who didn't get
undrafted free agent, right.
The value there usually makes more sense than picking somebody in the first round. You don't see running backs going as high as they used to, and that's because there are so many examples of guys going later in the draft having a huge impact. So, yeah, I think that second round pick could easily be a running back. And maybe if they go even later, they can get somebody that they can win with during Kamara's presumed absence, but also somebody who they're going to be able to use to spell him and not have to lean on Mark Ingram more than maybe he's capable of handling right now.
Before we go to break and hear from our underwriters and move on to the Pels, the other position is safety. They brought in P.J. Williams, which is again a nice player. Sorensen is going to be a guy that's going to take the Jeff Heath role, which is more of, again, maybe a dime linebacker slash safety, but more special teams than anything else. Tyra Matthew was in the building again this week. Again, there's been a lot of chatter about, again, him and the Saints getting together. There was talk that the Saints had an interest, along with some other teams. Look, I've said it since day one. He made $14 million last year, okay? He's not looking at this point in his career to take a pay cut. At least the reports yesterday said that there was a good conversation, but he's not willing to take a hometown discount. We have to see where, again, the water level rises on his contract with other teams to be able to figure out if he's going to be able to be in New Orleans. I think he'd be a great addition, but again, you also got to put safety there as well, right? Whether that's going to be a young safety or a safety you're going to get in free agency. So a wide receiver, safety, those are two things that I think even if you get it in the draft, you may have to do on the free agency and dip in there as well.
Yeah, it's an important position. I think they've actually signed 3 safeties.
Yes,
but
they have.
They're all special teams slash depth guys. They need a playmaker in the secondary. Tyra Matthew would be a perfect fit.
I agree.
It's going to come down to 2 things. It's going to come down to what the market bears and whether he's willing to back off of that no hometown discount to any degree. So I don't know if financially they're going to be able to make that work. I think they would both like to make it work. I think it would be a perfect match. When I was covering LSU full time, there were 2 players I covered who were my favorite players to cover at LSU, 2 of them my favorites ever covering. Tyrann Mathieu was one of them. Dynamic player, great person, team leader, wonderful person.
Right.
The other one was the baseball version of Tyrann Mathieu, and that was Alex Bregman, who was exactly the same type of person and player. So I love Tyrann Mathieu as a player and a person. I think he'd be a great addition for the Saints on the field and in the locker room. The fans would love him. We could finally do away with that Saints don't like LSU players thing. So it would check a lot of boxes.
And they lost Jenkins, who was a leader. And that's the reason why they went and got Jenkins to begin with. Again, they walked away from Von Bell for Jenkins because of leadership. Are you going to tell me that, again, there's still not a need for leadership in that defensive backfield from a veteran? He checks that box as well.
No, I think it makes perfect sense. If you could just say, what do the Saints need? What does Tyrann Mathieu want? And take money out of the equation, it would have been done already. But unfortunately, it's a business. The Saints can't spend as much as they would like to spend. Tyrann doesn't want to take less than he can get, and understandably so. I don't know if those 2 can come together, but it would be great for the team and the city if it could, and I think it'd be great for Tyrann.
I agree. I think all the way around. About $20 million under the cap right now. Here's the deal. They borrowed that from next year. Okay, and the Deshaun Watson deal. They literally borrowed that money from next year. I think their feeling is we're gonna try to hold on to as much of that cap money as we can and roll it over to next year. Okay, it's the following year where the TV deal is going to kick in, where the cap is going to explode again. So next year is where, again, they're still kind of in a situation where they're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul, but it's the following year where that cap will really expand for them. So we'll just see where they go there as well. But maybe a little bit of a change here. Remember what Dennis Allen said at the owners' meeting last week. We want to augment the team with free agency and build through the draft, where in previous years it was fill holes in free agency and then best player available in the draft. So it's a little bit of a shift here.
It is a little bit, and you can make either one work.
Sure, absolutely.
But you got to your personnel judgment has to be very good. But yeah, but I think they're trying to find that balance, because even though they're still positioned to be successful this year and next year, I think they still have to think long term in terms of getting younger and having cheaper labor. So it's a balancing act, like it always is. And I think this is where we're going to learn about Mickey Loomis, and we're going to learn about Dennis Allen, because Sean Payton had his hands on everything. Allen's going to do that to a similar degree, but he doesn't have as much experience doing it. And we're going to see, you know, Mickey's done a lot. You know, Sean got all the credit, but Mickey did a lot of the successful stuff they've done in the past also. I
would agree, Mickey, especially on the financial side. But I will also say, Les, you and I were here. I was covering the team back then when Mickey took over as general manager. You go back, and as I did, and you research those drafts, they were not really good drafts. You had a few splash players that came in and really played well for this team, but the depth of the draft was never there. They didn't have a lot of players that you could say they walked away with 3, 4, 5 players that contributed. They were a little bit top-heavy at times. Okay, and even then there was some bust when it came there. So hopefully, again, Jeff Ireland has a strong say on what's going on, because he seems to, again, when it comes to the draft, has it together. All right, let's take a break here. When we come back, we're going to shift to the Pelicans. Really good news there. We're going to talk Final Four as well. Also going to talk a little bit about the situation at LSU and how that affects Kansas going forward after winning a national championship when it comes to NCAA violations. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Les East, award-winning journalist, is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Les East of CrescentCitySports.com, Saturday Down South, award-winning journalist, is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. All right. It's come a long way, baby, right? That's that old commercial. It's come a long way, baby. Pels are 35-44. They're the 9th seed as of taping this show. They take on Portland tonight in the Smoothie King Center. They are 1 game ahead of the Spurs for the 9th seed. The Spurs are in the 10th seed. The Lakers are gone. Again, they're out, which means that lottery pick reverts to the Pelicans. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. There's 3 games left. The Pelicans have Portland at home, at Memphis, Golden State on Sunday to round out their season. The Spurs have at Minnesota, Golden State, and then at Dallas to round out their schedule. The play-in game for the Pelicans and the Spurs is scheduled for Wednesday night, 8:30, tentatively in the Smoothie King Center, unless, of course, the Spurs are able to jump ahead of the Pels. They hold the tiebreaker based on, again, wins and losses in the series this year. So, again, the Pels have to continue to be able to win to be able to hold on to home court advantage there. It is a 3-game playoff. If 7 plays 8, the winner of that game automatically goes into the playoffs as the 7th seed. The loser plays the winner of 9-10, and then the winner there they play for the championship or the opportunity to go and become the 8th seed in the NBA playoffs. So they've qualified for the tournament. They got a must-win really for the next 3 games to hold them off, San Antonio off, in order to be able to keep home court advantage. They start off 1-12. They were 3-16. And I hear some of the national narrative out there, and I did a monologue on this yesterday on the radio show, that, why the excitement over the 10th seed, the 9th seed? Well, You and I were around when Maravich and the Jazz were here. They never made it over. They were never 500. Right. Okay, never 500. We had Mashburn when the Pels, when the Hornets relocated here, and they had some success, almost instant success, right? You saw success with Chris Paul, okay, for the most part. Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday for a season or so. But for the most part, we've had below 500 NBA basketball for the entire time NBA's been in New Orleans. So when you look at the way this team started off 1-12 to 3-16 to now winning 35 games, thrusting themselves into this play-in tournament, there's a reason for jubilation in this town. And it's also, again, because this looks like it is bigger than just a one-year deal. This looks bigger than just one player as it did going into the season with it's Zion or bust. Griffin and Langdon have created a team now with bringing in a C.J. McCollum, the emergence of Brandon Ingram, the 3 draft picks, which again meant a lot, Valanciunas coming in, where this is a team that, again, with the culture that Willie Green has brought in, that now I think is on the cusp that they're going to be reckoned with going forward. Whether Zion is in or out, okay? Because again, if he's out, you're going to get picks and players for him that's going to help you. But just the core that they have right now, I think shows that they're a franchise on the come. Why don't you take it from there?
No question about that. First of all, about why are you excited about the 9th or 10th seed? Well, first of all, why does the NBA allow you to go beyond the end of the regular season as a 9th or 10th seed unless they think it's going to generate interest?
Of course.
So, yeah, they're excited. It means you get to play beyond the end of the season. That's what the whole season is about, is to play beyond the season. Now, in this case, with a young team that's developing a first-year program, if they go playing, first of the games they've been playing for the last few weeks have been playoff caliber games. Now they're going to play San Antonio next Wednesday, and maybe the season ends there, maybe it doesn't. If they win that and then they play the Clippers or the T-Wolves, if they get past that, they're playing the Phoenix Suns. They're going to have at least 4 games against the Phoenix Suns. That's going to accelerate the development of the individual players and the program. Any game that they get to play beyond Sunday is good for the franchise. I agree. So that's why people are excited. Plus the fact that everybody had written off the possibility when they were 1-12 and 3-16.
Why wouldn't you?
And understandably so, absolutely. So, well, let me say this quickly, because David Griffin has come under a lot of criticism, and rightfully so.
That's right.
And I've been one of his critics. And there's no point in rehashing any of that here. What we should be focused on here is in the last 8 months, he realized his hand-picked coach, Stan Van Gundy, was a bad fit. He fired him. He hired Willie Green. Excellent hire. No question about it. Culture changer, without question. Brought in Valanciunas, good move. Brought in Devontae Graham, nice move at the time, something they needed to do. The draft. Herbert Jones II, best pick in the entire draft last year. Trey Murphy III, nice pick who's come on late.
Yes, he has.
Found Jose Alvarado.
Come on.
How he went undrafted is beyond me. And then the C.J. McCollum trade was just a tremendous move. He's so much better, has such a big impact compared to what I expected.
Of course.
Great move. Larry Nance Jr. is another nice
piece. Tony Snell, who's now at the end of the bench. That was a great trade.
It was a great trade, and Tony Snell's not getting minutes now, which tells you that's because all the other moves were so good.
Yes. Jackson Hayes is now growing.
Moving him to the 4 was a revelation. So that's a lot of really good stuff David Griffin and his staff have done over the last 8 or 9 months.
deserve credit, no doubt.
And Trajan Langdon deserves a lot of the credit too. So let's give them credit because he took so much grief.
And look, you and I both gave it to him, and rightly so. And look, he used up some draft capital to be able to again turn this thing around. Okay, capital that you're holding on to, but again, you kind of got sweetened this past week with the fact that Lakers lottery pick falls back in your lap again in a very good draft. And a very deep draft.
Now, I think, technically speaking, I think if the ping pong balls do something really weird, that could fall out of the top 10, and they wouldn't get the pick. It's like it's like a 0.4 chance that would not be a top 10 pick. But with 99% plus sure that they're getting a top 10 pick from the Lakers, more likely going to be around 8. So their opportunities going forward are going to be tremendous with what they've already built. And I think what happens here is now they're dealing with Zion Williamson from a position of strength.
Absolutely.
Before it was like, oh, you can't trade away Zion Williamson because that sends a message that you can't keep elite players, and it's that the franchise is hopeless. Now, if you entertain offers for him during the offseason or next year, you're saying it's because we don't need him. We can get so much for him to put around everything we've done without him. With him not setting foot on the court this year, we can trade him and move on, and we're better. So they hold all the cards right now in terms of what to do with Zion Williamson. And I would hope he was on that trip out west.
He was.
I would hope he sat there and watched the win in Portland, the comeback, the win in L.A. was huge, and then the clinching win in Sacramento, and was around Willie Green and his teammates and realized, man, I want to be a part of this. He's wanted to be a part of it all along. Nobody's more frustrated by the injury than he is. But I think up close, he should have realized, man, this is really something special. I want to be a part of this and see where we can go with this. So it's all coming up roses. And if the season ends next Wednesday, so what? Where they've come since November and December to where they are now and what the future looks like is night and day.
I agree 100% on every one of your points. And they have been transformed from a team that was Zion dependent to now Zion independent. Okay? They put themselves in that position by, again, making some moves. The draft has really helped. And then, you know, look, the criticism of Zion, and it was he hasn't been here. Look, Willie Green transform that culture, and there's a buy-in there. And we know about culture and buy-in from watching Sean Payton for the last 15 years and what happened there. And you could see the similarities on the Pelican side. Now you can see that growth. People, guys that want to play together. The locker room is together. Again, you know, there's an internal attention to detail, but also, again, accountability. Between the players, which is what you got to have. Coach can only do so much. You got to have players that have accountability, leaders that, again, that are holding their other players accountable. You see that with C.J. McCollum. Okay, you see that with a Larry Nance Jr. who's come in, another veteran who's helped. You've seen the emergence of Brandon Ingram, not just as a scorer and a really, again, a top player, but also leadership there in the locker room. So all that works. So I agree with you. They are in a position of strength now. If Zion can come back and fit in, that's great. If not, you're going to get a treasure chest of players and picks for him that is going to only again raise the level of talent on this team. Now, Zion's stepfather was on the Jordy Culotta show this week, and they have used the Jordy Culotta show as kind of their mouthpiece, so to speak, their megaphone, so to speak, on social media. They sent the Zion dunk to him that went viral, and then he was on. Lee Anderson was on his radio on his TV show this past week, saying there's no animosity between the family and Zion to the organization. He doesn't know where that's come from. That Zion and his family love New Orleans, okay, and want to be here. This is one of the places they chose to come when there was an opportunity to come here, that they were all in, that he's healthy and ready to play. And that he's excited about the roster makeover, and of course what Willie Green has done in terms of changing the culture. This continues to be in the background here. The Williamson family trying to push the Pelicans into putting him on the floor, okay, and using, again, social media, media outlets to be able to get their point across. Your thoughts?
Well, I think there's actually a lot of good stuff in there.
Oh, I think it's a lot of great stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
saying that they're on the same page in a lot of ways. And I have no credible evidence to suggest that they're not on the same page, except for the one thing is Zion Williamson, like every competitive athlete who has ever been injured in the history of mankind, wants to play.
Right.
And he sometimes feels he's ready to play sooner than the medical experts and the organization that can think long term is willing to admit.
Right.
So, yeah, there's going to be friction there. There's going to be some disagreement because Zion just wants to play as soon as possible. The Pelicans are thinking, we don't want another setback. We got a good thing going now. We don't necessarily need you for the next 2 or 3 games. So that doesn't bother me if there's a friction there between the two. The question is, does he want to be here long term? And it sounds like, from what the stepfather is saying there, from what they said from the time he arrived, and from everything that's come from any credible source, is that he wants to be here, but he also wants to be in a situation where he thinks they're progressing toward being able to win a championship.
Which you can see
and
right
he's
now.
got exhibit A, B, C, etc. right now that that's the case. So everything should be on an upward trajectory right now. He's going to be dissatisfied if he doesn't get to play in the next week or so, but that's life. The point is, get this thing resolved for next year when this could be Memphis of 2023, and if it's not, then you start looking at the trade possibilities. But this is by no means irreparable, and all this noise is just nonsense.
No, it's a lot of national noise is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's a national narrative.
ESPN has too much programming to fill.
Right. I mean, again, it's either LeBron or where Zion's going. All right. So here we are. He wants to play. He feels like he's ready. I think the medical staff here has been overcautious, unlike the medical staff previously, which again, were bordered on malpractice, right? Are they a better team if he can play 10, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 16, 18 minutes a game coming off the bench? I mean, if you're in a series with the Phoenix Suns and this guy's coming off the bench for you and giving you 10 minutes a half, you're not a better team?
Yeah, well, that's the tricky thing, and fortunately for the Pelicans, Willie Green is much more wiser than I am at making this determination, and David Griffin as well. But I've said all along that I would be slow to bring him back
because of chemistry.
2 things. One, I don't want to risk another injury that requires another surgery.
Okay.
But also, there's no question it's going to disrupt the chemistry.
Right.
No, but it's a balancing act. Does the good outweigh the bad? Does the bad outweigh the good? I'm not sure, but having him on the floor creates a lot of problems for the defense. It would be great to put him out there, even if it's 10 or 12 minutes. But you don't want to risk anything. If the medical staff comes in and says, there's no greater risk to re-injury now than there will be on opening night next year, then you play him and you deal with the disruption. But if they say, boy, holding him out and giving him the whole summer to get ready for next season would really reduce the risk, then I don't think there's any way in the world you would play him just to get a game or 2 in there. To give yourself a better chance of advancing to play another game or 2.
Right. We'll see how it plays out. There's some pressure for the Williamson camp, though, to get him on the floor. We see that, and again, that's happened. This is the second time in 3 weeks now they've used the Jordy Culotta show or his social media platforms to be able to get the word out. All right, let's shift gears to the Final Four. Great Final Four for the city. You were there. The city knocked it out the park. That's all we were hoping for. This is the best. This is the first real major sporting event since the pandemic, and the city shined as we always do. Once again, New Orleans needs to be the, how we have gotten into this situation, and we know how. It's shiny new stadiums, right? Where, again, we're pushed back to like every 10 years for a Super Bowl, every 10 years for a Final Four, every 10 years for an NBA All-Star game. We should be in a rotation every 5 years for these events. Unfortunately, that's not happening anymore. But again, you ask the media, you ask the fans, they want it here every year.
Oh, it was great. It was going back to what New Orleans was when the rotation was smaller. and we were getting, you know, we had an 87 Final Four, we had a 93 Final Four, we had an 03 Final Four, and then it was 12 and 22 and got spaced out for a variety of reasons. But yeah, they hit it out of the park. The stadium was beautiful. Stadium was set up great. The fans had a great time.
Right.
You know, New Orleans is just designed for events like this because of the entertainment possibilities, the compactness of the city, the ability to get around, and the experience of having put on so many of these things. So you would expect New Orleans to do it nearly perfectly, and the city did.
Yep, the city did, and it was a great Final Four. Duke, North Carolina, Kansas winning it all. Got about 2.5 minutes left, and I got so much more to do. Can we do another half hour? But Bill Self won a national championship with Kansas. He has 5 violations against himself and also the University of Kansas. Those, again, are the same violations that Will Wade has. Same violations Penny Hardaway has. Penny Hardaway, Will Wade have lost their jobs. Well, Bill Self got a contract extension, which is a rollover contract. It was basically a lifetime contract. If there is any violations where they're found guilty of, he can lose half of his salary, and that's it. Do you feel that Kansas is going to be treated the same way as Memphis and LSU were?
No. We have precedent in the way North Carolina was treated. Their blue bloods are treated differently. 2 distinctions, or I would say differences without a distinction between LSU and Kansas. And you detailed how the similarities are significant.
Right.
Will Wade is on tape.
Right. With
the FBI saying, essentially confessing.
Confessing, correct.
Okay. Even though Bill Self has been determined to have, or at least.
It was his assistant coach that was on tape.
Right. But just the perception of Will Wade's voice on the tape that the FBI captured, admitting it, that separates it a little bit. Not rightly, but I think that's just human nature. The other thing is, the penalty that, you know, Will Wade losing his job, that was an LSU decision.
No, it was.
LSU chose enough is enough. They had a president and an AD who weren't loyal to this guy, and they say, no, enough is enough, we're moving on. Kansas, as a university, chose not to do that with their lawbreaker.
No, they extended him.
Right. So the difference here is that the optics, so to speak, with even though it's what you're hearing on tape, and the decisions made by the 2 universities are different. LSU was proactive. Kansas is like, oh, we got a championship team here. Let's not mess with this. So those are 2 big distinctions. Ultimately, it will come down to what the NCAA imposes. I think LSU is going to get hit harder than Kansas, just because the NCAA always does the wrong thing.
Yep. It's interesting because it's blue blood versus non-blue blood, and again, how this is going to come out. But you mentioned North Carolina, you mentioned Duke. They're involved in this as well. We'll see how it all plays out. Always great to have you on the program. Just a plethora of information. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Eric.
Les East, CrescentCitySports.com, Saturday Down South. And, of course, the name of the book is?
Donkeys, Elephants, and Giraffes. Read it. It'll make sense.
There you go. And, of course, as always, thanks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, plenty of ways to be able to catch our program now. Our first rebroadcast tonight is 6 p.m. on WLAE-TV, 10 o'clock on the Deuce WLAE-TV 2, Friday night, 9 o'clock Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock LAE, Saturday morning at 2 a.m. on the Deuce, and also Saturday afternoon at Pelican Sports Television at 5 p.m. Catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM. That's weekdays 4 to 6. Listen live at ericasher.com. Also, our website, the Anchor app is our choice for the podcast. But again, we're on all podcasting platforms, iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app. That's our digital platforms for the show as well. Also, again, want to thank our underwriters that make this show possible, as well as the WLA production staff, Alex Chacon, Logan Raffia, my director, William Hill, also Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, the entire crew here that does a fantastic job in producing this show each and every week. For Les East, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for an Easter edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.